Hi, I'm Dr. Tiffany Townsend,
I'm Dr. Saritha Williams,
and you're watching
In the Wild TV.
Wow, it really does provide a foundation for how I view myself. I mean, it really does help to provide my identity, to know about, as you say, Black excellence, and know all that many of my ancestors have had to go through and still been able to come through and not just survive but thrive.
Because my area is African American and African studies, when I was an undergraduate, when I was a grad student rather, I used to teach Swahili. I am a Kwanzaa celebrator. This is just, it's what I do. And it was always around me. But the fact that even in a city like Gary, Indiana, a historic city like Gary, Indiana, where the National Black Congress met and convened in that city, we still didn't learn about African Americans. It took me going to high school to actually get into it, and I really appreciate my teachers for just kind of giving me additional things. But I lived in the library. So even in elementary school, I was always in the library. I read everything just voraciously. And when I stumbled into Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and Gwendolyn Brooks and all of those poets of the 1970s and before, I was hooked. And so I just kept doing it. And so it just makes a natural progression for me to come and devote myself to studying this kind of a deep dive. And so when I was in graduate school, I wanted to not only study African American authors, but Caribbean and those African authors on the continent. And so that was the reason for comparative literature. So that I wasn't just studying African Americans. So if I connect that back to like, well, why is this important to me? Because I want to know myself. I want to understand our history. I want to be able to speak knowledgeably about African American experiences and Black people's experiences wherever they are in the diaspora. And I want to celebrate us. I mean, this is good stuff, it feeds my soul. It's everything that I need.
Whenever I struggle or whenever I feel like things are getting too difficult, I think back on all those who have come before and all they've had to overcome. And I just say, please, and I keep going. So it really does provide that grounding and foundation for me. It has provided a model for me to strive for, the foundation for me to keep going. And so it really is incredibly important for how I identify.
Gwendolyn Brooks is my favorite poet of all times. I respect her and admire her so much. She has a book. It's not a poetry book. It's a novella. It's called Martha. And I love that book because in it, the title character talks about these dandelions in her yard. And she asks this really profound question, why do people see dandelions as weeds instead of these beautiful flowers? And she compared herself. She saw kind of a kinship, a connection with those dandelions, that people didn't really respect her or value her like we don't respect dandelions. And so I think about that, and it's just so deep to me. And so I think about that, and I'm always like drawing dandelions and just kind of thinking about this. And the reason she liked those dandelions because they were strong and resilient. They could survive no matter what you do. Dandelions, you can mow the lawn, you can put weed killer out, and they come back. And so she kind of used that as a metaphor for Black women's experience in the States.
Again, I always kind of think about our ancestors and what they've gone through, and just thinking about the many who have been unnamed, who have paved the way for us. I get inspiration from that and knowing that. But more personally, even in my own family, I had a lot of trailblazers, and I wasn't even aware of the significance of that. My grandmother went to school and got her college degree in the 30s. and went on to get her master's degree at a time where many African Americans weren't even able to get a high school education. And she went on to marry someone who also had a master's degree and became a mathematician and one of the first in the federal government. And so I kind of grew up around what you called Black excellence, and I wasn't even aware of what they were doing or even what they had to go through in order to achieve what they were able to accomplish. And so just thinking about my family, Clyda Dantzler, who's my grandmother, my grandfather, Vernon Dantzler, and the model that they provided for me. And then obviously there's so many out in the world and in our history. You know, I think about the Black history makers now, right? Amanda Gorman, the fact that she's going to be an inspiration to so many. Obviously, Kamala Harris are folks that we can look to, and Michelle Obama. And so there's so many Black women, there's so many Black figures in our history that have paved the way and have provided models for how we can get through a lot of struggles, but not just survive, but to thrive. And so I look to them, and I know that I stand on their shoulders, and I'm very grateful.